Good evening and welcome to another episode of What's So Funny, the show that probes the minds, the brains, the psyches of the people who make the funny. Tonight, an epic episode. Comedy legend Norm Macdonald talks to us for 90 minutes. 90, folks. It's not all comedy, though. Some topics we discuss are hypochondria, God, and the scientific method. Hilarious, but fascinating nonetheless. Word of warning, at about the 30-minute mark, my equipment crapped out, so I went to my backup. It sounds fine, but you will notice a difference in the sound quality. Okay, let's get to this monster. Enjoy the ride. Norm Macdonald.
Just talk like this. It won't sound too... sometimes like I sound all lethargic when I'm too relaxed.
Yes, Norm, I heard you interviewed on KGO Radio once. And the host thought you were on something because you were so...
San Francisco?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was hilarious. And I'm so stupid I didn't even realize. The guy kicked me off the air.
And you were going, thanks, it was fun.
I didn't even understand it. And then I got home and people were phoning me sorry about that thing. I'm like, why? What happened? I didn't even know I was kicked off. But I had a crazy... people always think I'm on drugs, you know? So I had a crazy... chlorine got my eye and I hurt myself before. So I had sunglasses on. So I show the guy and he's asking me all these stupid questions and I'm all tired. So in between commercials, I'm like, look at my eye. It's so weird because it was all red. And then he made it sound like I was a heroin addict or something.
Yeah, and you were answering questions and I thought, oh, this is interesting. And he would think, all right, I'm going to try another one.
He kept going. Yeah, when I re-listened to it, I realized he kept going, okay, one more time. Because he'd ask me and then his questions were all wrong too and stuff. And so I try to correct it. And then he'd be like, okay, I'm going to try this one more time. But also he was asking me super serious questions. And then he was mad because I wasn't being hilarious.
Yeah, you're supposed to make jokes. And then he would play a clip of you from 20 years ago and say, you don't sound like this anymore.
I know.
So you must be high.
He did say that, yeah. It's true. It's weird hearing your own voice a long time ago because, I sound completely different.
Well, I find, we're about the same age. I find the whole process of aging weird.
Yes.
How does that happen when we look at ourselves 20 years ago? At no point along the way do we know that we're changing.
No, it's gradual. That's the insidious.
But it has to happen.
Yes. I used to think if I'd videotape myself every day that I wouldn't age. I used to have this crazy theory.
Did you ever try?
No. And also when I had my kid, I was going to videotape him every single day. To see what
How long that last?
Well, it lasted a few days.
Yeah.
Infants aren't that interesting, it turns out. But yeah, no, it's aging. Yeah, it creeps up. It's like you don't see it. You don't see it from one day to the next. It's very clever.
It is clever. And going back to this guy with the interview, you do every interview anyone ever asks you.
Sure, yeah.
Right?
Yes,
and you seem to enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm fine with talking to people. Yeah.
Have you always been that way? Or was it a conscious decision? Because I interview lots of comics.
Yeah.
And as I told you when we did the phone thing a week or so ago, the first time we talked, it was 90 minutes. And after the fact, I was thinking, you were probably having fun with me, trying to keep me on the line for as long as possible, just to see how long it would be.
No, I just talk until the other guys finish talking, I don't have a very all I do really is write, so I'm always kind of available. I don't have a busy life.
Oh, so then it's good to actually talk to a human.
Yeah, that's the thing I really have to try to focus on in my life is getting outside of my apartment, talking to human beings.
Well, you said you don't go out anywhere.
No, I never go out.
And you don't drink?
Well, I don't drink, so I don't go to bars like that. That cuts a lot of that cuts almost all social life out. And then I don't like going to restaurants and eating for long periods of time. So yeah, mostly I'm alone in my apartment.
Except for when you're on the road, and we went to a nice breakfast. Had a nice leisurely breakfast this
we
morning.
had a nice breakfast. It was nice. I like diners. Like on the road, I love diners. I don't eat fancy food, so.
Right. Yeah, me too. I like that. So we went to the Elbow Room.
The Elbow Room
and you've
was
been there a
awesome.
couple times.
Yeah, it's great. They insult you. It's one of those places where they playfully insult you, except they do it a little more hard-edged here.
Yeah. Well, if you invite it, I guess.
Yes.
Which you do. You.
It's elderly gay gentlemen that lambaste you for being gay.
Yeah, that's an odd concept, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's just a strange thing. It's often strange when like liberal comedians will do that about Republicans. They'll go, that guy's probably secretly gay, as if that's bad.
Yeah. That's right.
Like I thought they were not homophobic. Turns out homophobia runs deeper than anyone ever suspected. Like as open-minded as you are, like, very few people would, if they had a gay friend, would help that guy, achieve an orgasm.
As
wait,
opposed to
can I be dirty?
Yeah. As
no,
opposed
a guy
to their
would never
women.
give another guy a hand job, even if he was his buddy. Like if you're a straight guy and your best friend's gay, why not give him a hand job? It'd just be a nice thing to do for the guy. But that's how deep homophobia runs.
Right. I guess there's some. I said that you have this logic. I don't see it there.
You don't see it? Would you give your gay friend a hand job?
Well, would I give my straight female friend a finger bang? I don't know.
Yeah, you probably would.
I probably would. You're right. You're right there. But would she give her male straight friend a hand job?
No. But that's because she's a girl. She might give her male gay friend one, though. Girls are different when it comes to sex. But
girls are different.
Girls are different.
We were just talking about this.
We were talking about that because of the Adam Carolla comments.
Yeah, and so I assume you know Adam.
Yeah, I know Adam. He's really funny.
And
he's very funny.
Probably done his show.
Yep.
He speaks his mind.
Yeah, he does.
And he made the mistake of speaking to a reporter.
Yeah, it's a print reporter. Yeah.
A print reporter. They're the worst. Saying, well, he wasn't saying women aren't funny. Well, maybe he did say that, but they don't try to understand what he's saying. They just take those words.
Right. They take the quote.
How do you think this will affect him?
I don't think it's going to affect him well, because it's not. You're not going to win saying things like that. But
you say things like that all the time.
I have said things like that. I have said things like that. But the problem is if you say things like that once, and then they will ask you 1,000 times that thing, the same question over and over again till that's all you're talking about, since all of a sudden, because Jerry Lewis famously said women weren't funny 20 years ago, and that's like now part of his legacy. It's bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course he is completely understandable because there were no women comedians, or, the guy's 90 or something. So from his point of view, it's completely understandable.
So the thing with saying that, though, there are always exceptions.
Yes.
And also, I was saying that I think he's talking more about in the general population rather than performers.
He's talking about, he's generalizing, which is supposed to be somehow has become a bad thing. But yeah, he's generalizing. And I think he even said, he put it into the idea of, if you were going to have a pickup basketball game and at random there were a bunch of African Americans and a bunch of white guys standing around, you would be better suited to pick the African Americans at random, and you'd probably have a better basketball game. And so he was making the point that
he wasn't helping his case.
Yeah, that didn't help.
Yeah. Let's see. Instead of just being misogynistic, let's throw in racism too.
But then they throw in that they make these words like misogynistic or homophobic, which implies hatred I mean, it doesn't imply it. It means hatred. So, that's a terrible thing to say about a person, that they hate women or they hate minorities just because they state something that they believe to be a fact. No, we were talking about earlier, like if you state something that you think is a fact, it doesn't mean that you can talk about slavery, and that doesn't mean you're pro-slavery, by just saying there was slavery.
Yeah.
He's not saying why, for all, if women are funny or not, or whatever the social reasons they are, he's not defending any of those reasons that came into being. But if you say women make less money than men, then is that bad too? I don't know. I thought that was good to say so that women
could rise up.
Could rise up, yeah. So
unless you're saying they deserve to make less.
Unless you're saying they deserve, right. Which is
even when you're careful with your language, people will hear whatever they want to hear.
Yeah, the people will definitely hear whatever they want to hear.
Or their backs are already so up that you can't even begin to talk about this in any kind of rational way.
No, of course. And people also, they have no ability to think, most people. They just, whatever the current stylish thing is to say. It gets rather wearying to hear things that you've heard 200 times, a day told you by someone as if it's the first time you have ever heard that. Like any issue. That's why I don't really ever argue about things anymore with politics or religion or anything, because I've heard every argument, every counter argument. It's just so dull. Like, no one's saying anything new that I haven't heard a trillion times.
They just go in cycles.
Yes, exactly. When I was young, abortion was like a terrible thing, and now abortion's fine. So I don't know. Just people seem to just go with whatever the stylish thing is to think, I guess.
And in the case of Corolla, I had a situation on Facebook. Somebody made a comment about what he said, made fun of him. And I asked him if he actually read the full quotes. And of course he hadn't. Right. But he had heard other people talking about it. Well, he said this, so there must be some truth to it if everybody's talking about it. Yes, exactly. And that's fine if you base your opinion after reading it and going, yeah, no, I think he is misogynistic. I mean, right. At least then you would have something to base it on rather than just, that's what everyone's talking about.
Yeah, definitely. People get their news from from Facebook updates, which is the equivalent of bathroom graffiti or something, and then you don't even know where you're getting your news from. You're like, did I hear that on CNN or did my taxi driver tell me? Information gets all muddled up.
Yeah. I want to say I saw your show 3 times over the last 2 days. The third time, last night I was watching you. And in my mind, I was going, did he say that already this show, or was that the show before? And so does it ever get muddled in your mind?
Well, it gets muddled that I change the order all the time.
Yeah, you do that. But
sometimes I think of stuff as I'm talking too, and so then it becomes something else all the time. But do you mean, did I say this during the set itself?
Yeah.
Yes, I've thought that before. But I've thought that I used to think that when I did 2 or 3 shows in a row and
on the same night.
On the same night, yeah, and I had my set list because I mix myself up all over the place. I definitely go, oh my gosh, did I say that, or did I? Because something occurs to me and then it reoccurs, and then I go back to the first point, and then sometimes I get confused as to. That's a scary feeling.
Have you ever repeated yourself?
I think I've repeated myself because sometimes you can hear a sort of a chitter,
a murmur,
that sounds different than a laughter. And then what I do is I try to just repeat everything as if I intended to. That's my default position.
Genius. I didn't know that you used to live in Vancouver.
Yes, I love Vancouver.
When did you live here?
Oh gosh, when I was a boy, it was like 1979 or something, 1980 when I was a young boy.
But you were on your own.
Yep. But I came here because it was beautiful and there was lots of work
From
in
Quebec.
those days. From Quebec, yeah.
And what did you work at here?
Just like manual labor. I was too young to. I had to get I was like an undocumented worker, kind of, I guess, looking back. And then we'd stand on the corner and trucks would go by and you'd get in them and stuff like that.
What?
But, yeah.
How old are you?
Well, no, it wasn't. Well, no, it wasn't like the Depression. It was like
Grapes of wrath.
Yeah, like if you're standing at for temporary labor, like you stand on the corner and then trucks go by and then you all run up to the truck and try to get in. And then they have these other temporary manpower places where they really gyp you, where they take almost all the money and they give you like minimum wage back then was $3.15 an hour or something like that. But then the middleman for the company would make $8 whatever. And then you'd go, and then you'd like the worst was I was in a garbage truck once. It seemed fun at the time. It seemed like, hey, that's fun, like riding on the back of a garbage truck, because you're riding, you're standing up. It looked fun when I was a kid.
Fresh air, yeah.
Yeah, but first of all, the guy goes way faster than you think. The driver, like you'd never have time, and then people put everything in their garbage, like it'd be. You pick up the garbage can, be filled with sod, it'd weigh like 200 pounds, and then the next place would be like a couch that's broken in half. And then you're exhausted. And then the funniest was you go, all the garbage men went to the same place for lunch. So they completely ruined this fucking guy's business.
Just stinking there.
Yeah, his restaurant just stunk of garbage, and so he had no other clientele after a while. And then so you're exhausted and everything, and then at the end of the day, like you're so tired, and then you drive to the dump, which is the worst place. It's just like hell itself. There's little fires all over. There's rats running around everywhere. It's just, and then you drive home, and then I had to get on a bus, and you smell like garbage. So I only did that like 2 days.
Okay.
That was maybe my worst job. Although there's other jobs where I had I remember one job, like when you're doing these day jobs, man, they'll just make you do anything. And there's this one where I had all this chemical stuff and I had to put like plastic in it. I don't know what it was, but all I remember is a trough of chemicals that I was breathing in for 8 straight hours.
That explains a lot.
Yeah.
How long did you live here?
Probably 8 months. I lived here on the island.
I know you lived in my hometown, Victoria.
Victoria, yeah. I kept going back and forth because Victoria was easier to live when you had no place to stay, and then Vancouver was a little rougher.
So we were there at the same time. I may have come across you.
I was there. Was that the years you were there? Like 1979.
I grew up there, yeah.
Yeah, about 1979 and 1982 or something like that.
So, yeah, I mean, you quit school to come out because I was still in high school then.
Yeah, I quit.
Yeah. And your parents pleased with your decision?
I don't know. Like my dad was real old when he had me, so he was like...
Oh, wait, how old was he when he had you?
I think he was 50.
Okay, good.
So he was in the Depression. He was actually in the actual Depression. So he left home when he was young because everybody had to. So he didn't mind it that much. But now looking back, now that I have a kid, I was like, oh my God, I must have worried my mother like crazy.
Yeah.
Because my son, I'm worried about him all the time, It's funny when you have a kid. And he's
about your age, the age that you were when you moved.
When you have a child, like you realize like the love that your parents have for you because... and then how unrequited it is because, I love my mom, but if she phones, it's not the most thrilling moment of my day. but I call my kid constantly, and I feel like the same thing. He's just like humoring me, and he has something fun to do, and I'm like, ooh, can we talk later? But it's very strange. You'll find this out, Guy. When they leave, it's a great moment for them, and it's the worst moment in your life.
Yeah. So
it's a very odd thing I've never experienced.
I'll be in a home by then, though.
In a home?
Yeah. So he hasn't left yet.
Oh, he's in college. He's gone.
Right.
But the texting is great. I like the texting because it avoids like long, awkward silences.
Yes.
Because you go, how was school? How's your courses? Did you play basketball? Did you see a basketball game? You know, and then you run out of stuff. But on the texting, you have time to think
Right.
and compose like a thought. But then it breaks your heart when he just stops replying at some point during the conversation. At the end, no one says goodbye; they just vanish.
It's got to end sometime. Yeah.
But I love that texting. It's taken all awkward, long silences where you could possibly say something wrong out of the equation.
Yeah, and also you don't want to interrupt someone.
Yes, that's very true. Yeah,
Let them get to it when they get to it.
yeah, that's a good point.
Hello, this is Gilbert Gottfried, and you're listening to What's So Funny on CFRO 102.7 FM, and it's also on podcast in iTunes. But I wouldn't pay attention to the show on anything it's on. If it was right in front of me, I wouldn't be listening or watching or paying attention.
You have two brothers, is that right?
Yes, I do.
And did they leave home early too?
No, they didn't. No.
So you were the black sheep.
Yeah, they were responsible.
And they still are. Neil
people.
Macdonald.
Yes, very responsible adults.
I love telling people that don't know that your brother is Neil Macdonald.
Yeah, my
CBC
brother's
News.
a serious guy. Yeah.
Now I heard, I don't know if this is true, I don't know where I heard it, that he was funnier than you as a kid.
Oh yeah, he was the funny kid. Yeah, because I never spoke or anything.
You shy?
Yeah, but you know how people say they were shy when they were children? I was it was like a pathology or something. I couldn't if I went to a store, I had to walk around the store for 10 times before I could talk to the storekeeper. But yeah, my brother was garrulous and funny, and
He was older.
I just tried to act like him. Yeah, he was older. It's probably pretty common that people emulate their older brother. And
Where's the third one in the line?
he's still in Ottawa.
But I mean, is he older? Younger?
Oh, he's young. Yeah, we're all within 3 years. We're all real close to the same age.
And the other one is also a journalist?
No. He just lives in Ottawa. He goes from job to job.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
So there was a time when you and Neil were both newsmen.
In a way, yeah. It was strange. It was odd. I don't know how that happened, but it was funny. But he was in Israel or something. He goes to these trouble spots. That was his. Thankfully now he's in Washington. He just stands in front of the White House and reads stuff they give him. But I don't think you get many scoops when you're a Canadian journalist in Washington. But so he just stands. But he loves the war zones and stuff. But finally he got too old for it and got worried about his kids, I think.
It's a family trait.
Yeah.
Or just
what
a
is?
human trait, worrying about your kids. And
Yeah.
I guess it's not just the
Well,
McDonald's
some
that
people
worry
don't.
about their
I mean,
kids.
I think when I was young, nobody worried about kids. You know what I mean? I'd just get on my bike and take off and then show up at some other point.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. But we didn't have texting. So
No, that's
just had to
true.
assume, yeah.
My kid, I remember I'd walk him to school. It was 4 blocks to school. And then there was this guy who lived next to me, the only guy with common sense in our neighborhood. And his kid would walk to school and everybody would be like, what? The kid's only 7. And then he's like, we live in Beverly Hills. He's not going to get killed. And then I remember, I used to walk to school. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I'd have to walk, I don't know nowadays.
Oh, the kids today.
The kids.
Your stand-up, anyway, I relate to a lot.
This seems boring. Is this a boring one?
Yeah, it's one of the worst.
I know, it seems unnaturally uninteresting. Seems deeply uninteresting so far on my part.
Now, did you think that when you did Marin's podcast?
Wait, what were you just about to ask me?
I can't remember now.
You said that,
that I relate to. You have. Well, one, you're a hypochondriac.
Yeah, so you like that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I don't call it a hypochondria.
No, I call it an alarmist. Because I don't make things up that I don't have. I just go to the worst possible.
Yes. And
case.
the computer doesn't help it any.
I've stopped looking because
that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
So, but I always wonder, because as you know, Mike Macdonald
Yes.
had these health issues. I think he has hepatitis C,
Yes.
and there was benefits all across the country. He's back in Ottawa because he didn't have health insurance.
Yes.
In the States.
right.
Now, I know you're not an American citizen, but you've maybe worked enough to get.
I have health insurance in the States,
that's good. So I was wondering, as a hypochondriac, you can't just show up all the time to emergency, or you talk about calling 911 and how to get them there.
Oh, yes. Well, I did like
I go at the drop of a hat.
First of all, this is...
And it costs nothing.
Yes,
So, but
I
what
know.
would you do in the States?
No, I know, you're in trouble. That's what... It's funny, like you say about Mike Macdonald. This is going to sound selfish, but like when I hear about someone getting something, I immediately think about myself getting it.
Yeah.
Rather than the other person.
Or when someone dies, you immediately think, what were the symptoms?
Exactly.
I might have that.
Yeah.
So, it is totally selfish.
But hypochondria, though, is... it might be too... Like, the only chance you have is early detection. Like, that's the only chance. That's the only part I can play in it. Is early detection. That's your only hope. So my idea is just a barrage of exams, the most invasive types of exams possible. Because then if you hit it early, you can possibly save yourself. I would feel like a fool if I...
Yeah, you hear people and you go, what were the symptoms? And, for 6 months they had something that they just thought was nothing.
Yeah.
I go like... 2 days, I'm worried.
Absolutely. And, I don't want the responsibility, too, of the guilt of... In a way, that's, a lot of reason I quit smoking cigarettes, because not only are you dying at the end, but you knew you did it to yourself, which must be hell. I mean, I don't know. That must be just the deepest remorse.
Stupid.
Yeah, God. So I would hate to, not go for a colonoscopy and then get colon cancer. So I'd rather just get the colonoscopy.
Have you had one?
Yeah, I'm having one next Tuesday.
First one?
No, next Wednesday. No, I've had two. You're supposed to get them when you're 50. I got mine I'm 48 now. I've had two. But it's because Katie Couric's husband was on the TV, and he got his when he was 38 or something. So what they do is they test guys that are at the highest rate. So it's like a bell curve, like with colon cancer, for instance. Like, you're not supposed to get it looked at till you're 50. But the evidence shows 10% of the people, it's like a bell curve. So it's 10%, then 80%, then 10%. So the two people at the edge of the bell curve, the 20% of the people, they get colon cancer under the age of 50. But because it's statistically irrelevant, they're just dealing in quantity, the medical establishment. So they go, well, why would we test these people that are only at such a low risk for it? We'll test everybody in this 80% range. But if you happen to be on that 10% range, you get missed, and then you're dead. You die, because by the time they find it, if you got it when you were 35, a test at 50 isn't going to help you. So it's better if you can possibly afford it to get it done as soon as possible. Why am I talking about colonoscopy?
Because I appreciate this, and I'm sure there are others out there. I mean, I haven't had one yet.
You gotta have one. God damn.
I will.
Here's the thing: you gotta have a colonoscopy, because a polyp can turn into cancer within 5 years, and everybody has polyps in their
everybody
in their intestinal tract. Yeah. And also, the when you have the operation, they give you this twilight drug, which is a very wonderful. It's called an amnesiac, and it keeps you conscious, because they have to ask you questions while you do it, and it's man, it's a powerful drug. It's so powerful. Like, you know what I mean? They can put stuff up your ass and stuff and, talk to you and you're cool with it. Like, even on heroin, you would not be cool with that. But this stuff is so powerful that you're having a good time and laughing and joking.
So, and you also talk about, I'm going to be dead in 20 or 30 years. And you start to think that at our age, too. And it's, I don't know when that started. Well, I think even as a teenager, I thought a lot about death.
Yeah. No, I mean, thinking about death is like I think it's kind of a terrible thing to do, but I think about it a lot. But I think it's sort of like a sin because it's just indulgence. Mm-hmm. And then, you don't want to get to the point where something happens and you're like, why did I spend all that time thinking about death when I had life? Like, you don't want to hit that point where you're no longer sound but sick, and then go, God, why did I spend my whole life ruminating about an inevitability? And also, like, not to get too deep or anything about this, but I think about it a lot. But the way I came to feel that I try to tell myself is that since when you're dead, you're not alive, and since when you're alive, you're not dead, you and death will never actually cross paths. So there's really nothing to be afraid of.
Except for that half hour where, time's coming.
Yeah, well, you know what the good part is about that, about the end, is you got no pain because they got morphine. They're jamming syrettes and morphine in your neck. Like, that's why it's like, my grandfather died peacefully. Yes, because he was on so much narcotics. That's why he fucking died peacefully. It's not because... If you went back like 200 years, those guys didn't die peacefully. They were just fucking howling for 3 days with black bile pouring out of their nose. This is all funny stuff.
It's not all about the laughs. But no, you talk about this on stage in a funny way, about your dark thoughts about the end of life. But you're saying in your real life, though, you've just told yourself there's no point in fretting about an inevitability.
Well, I try.
Are you successful at that?
No, I'm not successful. I just try to tell myself that. But in the deep of night,
that's when it hits.
Yeah, that's not fun. And like my worst moments in life is when I get up late at night and go in the bathroom and turn the light on and look into my own eyes. But anyways, I try to, you try to keep it at bay. You try to keep all those thoughts at bay, and like, in a sense, like that. That's why I think like routine is important. I have a job where, like, there's not routine. You have to self-impose routine. But I think that, to me, like, the key to unhappiness is, like, just indulgence. Like, with anything, if you indulge in sex or in alcohol or in drugs or in video game, it doesn't matter. If you indulge in things, you're not happy. And I think, like, our previous generation, they never indulged in anything. Like, my dad worked all day and then he'd have a couple beers, and I'm sure those beers were tasted really good to him. And his vacations, as modest as they were, probably had great value. We indulge ourselves more, and then the generation that follows us really indulge themselves. And I don't know, to me, I think that's where you get unhappy, when you start indulging. That's the key to unhappiness. What am I talking about?
Indulging in Twitter and things like that. Did you hear that Woody Allen interview he did with a French TV station?
No.
He talked about why he just obsessively works from one film when that one's ended. he moves on to the next one, and it's to get his mind off of dying. Essentially, it's gives him routine, gives him something to do just to keep his mind away from that.
Yeah. God, that's depressing. No, but yeah, I can see what he means. Like, I remember when my dad retired, because that was his whole dream, was retiring his whole life. Like, it was always to retire. And then when he retired, he forgot to think of something to do. Like, he didn't have hobbies or anything. So then he was just sitting around the house, and like he was sad because like he just had this idea of retirement, and he had this idea that doing nothing would be a wonderful thing, which is just natural for us to think. But no, I think that must be why Woody Allen or Clint Eastwood or stuff would work like that when they have so much money, is to not be alone with your thoughts and to be distracted. Like one time I went to a psychiatrist because I was gambling too much, and he told me you do that to like avoid life, and then that was my argument, was like, that's why you do everything, is to avoid. You live life to avoid life in a way, like you live the minutia of daily existence. You wake up, and then you eat, you wash your face and shower and have the exact same conversations with the exact same people over and over and over and over again, just to kind of achieve some self-hypnosis, so you stay away from thinking about. This is why people that do drugs, I think the drugs take away the defense of, if they take very powerful hallucinogenics or something, they probably are thinking more clearly in some ways about life, in the sense that they no longer worry about finding food or talking to friends. They start thinking about real things, and it's so horrifying that they get psychotic breaks and so forth. Again, this is all hilarious stuff.
It's not a comedy show. It's a show about comedians. Because I find it fascinating. Now, is it a function of age, or have you always had these thoughts? Like I say, I thought a lot about death, and it's not that I obsess over it. It's just that I'm curious. I wonder, and I think. I studied philosophy, and I think about when that happens, right? So, is this more something that's you're thinking a lot more about now, or have you always been this way?
Well, I remember when I was young, I think I was the most terrorized by the idea. But it might have been other. Maybe I was worried about my parents dying or something like that. Yeah. But no, I was always like afraid. I was afraid of like something random just happening that could knock me out of the game real quick, or. I'm very cautious. Like, I don't do anything that can put me in situations, because people go, "Oh, you got to live," But you can just you can live by being cautious and careful and not doing like. I don't want to cheat. I don't want to jump out of a plane. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to jump out of no plane, and I'm not going to do any drugs that'll kill me. And I'm not going to drink alcohol all the time, because that stuff, I don't want to. I just want to grow. I just want to grow old and die a slow, like painful death. No, I don't know what I want, but it is. But now that because now I'm kind of. Because I'm 48, so I'm kind of like always thinking 20 years in the future and trying to figure out how I can be in good enough shape to... But also, I think I should do something before then, like I should go travel and see someplace, because I don't want to be like them old people that they start traveling when they're hit 80 or whatever, and then they're on a bus with other people being herded around. I was thinking in my mind that I'd like to take a train across Canada again, like I did when I was young and stuff. Well, I'm still young enough to. Well, I'm still ambulatory. Oh my God, this is getting funnier by the moment.
I don't want to be traveling when I'm 80 and dying on the plane or the bus, because that would be embarrassing. And I think you kind of talk about that too.
Jeez, I was just reading. That's weird. Because I love Russians, and I read Tolstoy a lot, but I don't know anything about him. But a guy told me, because I don't read biographies and stuff, but a guy told me that Tolstoy was, they did this movie called The Last Station with Christopher Plummer, where he played Tolstoy. But anyways, he was apparently obsessed with death, and he wanted to be an ascetic because he was born a count, but he never had the courage to just give everything up. And then finally one day he said, I'm just giving. He was old though, like late 70s. He said, I'm giving everything up, and I'm just going to wander the world like Christ. And then he went to the train station and died.
On his way.
Yeah, at the train station. So he waited too long, Again,
This is fascinating.
This is John Wing, and you're listening to What's So Funny on CFRO, 102.7 FM in Vancouver, and all over the globe on the internet. What is so funny?
You talk also about, I think I've heard, maybe you just alluded to it on Marin's podcast, something about your faith. I don't know what your faith is. Is it getting stronger as you get older? Or you're sort of searching or something? What was it?
I don't know. I just have an intuition that there's a God. When I say God, I don't mean like a force or something. I mean an actual personage. I just have this intuition that there is one. Like I've always had it, and I've always had this deep intuition. Without, I have no evidence or anything, and I don't really everything I've read from religious tracts or stuff all seem like insane to me. So I haven't really found one, but although I will say this: of all the religions, I like Judaism and I like Christianity. Maybe that's the way I was brought up, but I do notice. I was thinking about the other day, there are some people that believe that man is divine, like kind of a hippie idea, that we are all beautiful creatures. So anyways, I can't believe that because I know my own heart, and I know that's not true. And then other people believe we're wretched, like the cynics, or the atheists or whatever would believe that we're all just wretched, nothingness, we're just animals, just creatures. So I can't believe that. That doesn't make any sense, that we're just beasts. So I will say that Christianity has this interesting compromise where we're both divine and wretched, and then there's this middleman, you see, that's the Savior, that through him we can become divine, but we're born wretched. And so it's a very fascinating idea. I kind of like that one because it sort of makes sense. The other two are both seem equally untrue. One, that we're all divine and interconnected with nature, just seems like nonsense to me. The other, that we're beasts of the field, seems like nonsense to me. So I kind of like that Christian idea, but I'm not. I don't belong to any church or anything.
Yeah, you don't look. So you believe there's a guy in the sky?
Yes.
But how does that? How can you even imagine such a thing?
That there's a man in the sky, invisible man in the sky?
Yeah. Where is he?
Well, we can't see him. I guess it would be, how could a fish possibly imagine a person?
Maybe they do.
Maybe they do, but maybe they'd be mocked by other fish if they ever brought it up. Because if they've never seen it, there's a I don't know. There's a difference between I cannot believe that I believe in souls. I believe that man has a soul. I actually believe that man has a body. I believe that man is a soul, and it just makes complete, like, finite sense to me because I meet people, and they're not reflective of their body. You can see an old, withered man who has a bright soul. So their soul is not aging with their body. What makes them, there's obviously a difference between a dead person and an alive person, but an old person and a young person are identical. So that's why I believe that people are souls and not bodies, and that the bodies that we have are no more than garments, really.
That's not just their brain, their thoughts.
Their soul?
Yeah.
No, I believe the brain and the thoughts are like physiological. I think people get mixed up that your brain is a physical thing and your mind is a physical thing. So those physical things, your mind, for instance, your mind can't conceive of inconceivable things. It's beyond its capacity because it's just a mind. All it knows how to do is think. So then how can you conceive of something in a very, very real way that doesn't exist? I think it's impossible. I don't think there are atheists, personally, is my opinion. I don't believe there's any such thing.
Meaning what?
Meaning that I don't think there's any such thing. When I hear atheists talk, all they talk about is God. It's very hard to talk about something that doesn't exist and be fascinated with it. It seems impossible to me personally. Now they might be much deeper than me and be able to imagine unimaginable things, but I don't think that you can imagine something. I think that's the arrogance of man, that he thinks he can imagine unimaginable things, personally.
But I think atheists are only talking about God because that's the culture we grow up in. For me, I don't identify as an atheist, but I think it's just not a factor in my life. I can't conceive of a God, but if there's one, there's one, and there's nothing we can do about it, and we'll find out in due time, I guess. So it's just an absence of belief. It's not theism, it's atheism. And it's only a reaction to everyone,
It's reaction. All it is reactionary.
Yeah, so...
But the problem with it is this, with atheists I have heard, is they're usually, as with most, people that like to argue, they're usually missing the entire point of everything. So, because this is a very important question, and then they end up talking about priests fucking kids or something, or they talk about the Crusades or some ridiculous nonsense that has nothing to do with the question. So as soon as I hear them talk about that, I go, okay, well, you're a fucking idiot. Why should I listen to anything you say? Further than that, if we would go to even deeper level than that, if everything was created by accident, then that means that you and I were also created by accident. And that means that Richard Dawkins was created by accident. So why the fuck should I listen to him? Like why would an accident be able to convey to me how he became an accident through a series of accidents? That makes no sense to me.
So, see, now we're getting funny. How about this, though? If God created the universe, he also created the cannibals that are in the news today. He created the what created wars and all the badness in the world too. So how do you explain that?
Well, I don't explain it. I mean,
Why would he?
Why not? I mean, you know, I mean, it's the atheists believe in the fairy tale because they're saying, how could God be mean? Why the fuck can't he be mean? You know, why can't he allow races to be turned to ash? Why not? What the fuck is it matter? It's the atheists that live in the fairy tale saying God should do this, God should do that. You know, you read the Bible, it says rain falls on the wicked and the just. He doesn't give a fuck.
The Bible now.
Well, the Bible, I mean, that's the only one I know, you know.
Yeah. Well, so somebody wrote the Bible. I don't know. That's have you studied or read philosophy?
Somebody wrote philosophies too. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm just saying somebody wrote atheistic tracts too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all just man thinking of stuff.
Yeah, some pretty great men.
Yeah.
So you don't like, or you say you don't on stage, important comedians, important comedy, and yet I consider what you talk about subversively important and very intelligent, and you sort of Socratic even.
Maybe Socratic because I don't know. I don't know answers. But no, like I listen. I like interesting comedy. Like I guess I meant important in quotation marks, like that. The subtext is that you're important. But when I was young, my act was all different, and I would talk about dogs and cats and stuff. And then Sam Kinison told me, because he was a big star and stuff, and he let me open for him when I was just starting in Canada. And he told me you can talk about anything you want. Just, you know, is that what interests you the most? So anyways, that was kind of a turning point for me that I probably should talk about what I tend to ruminate over and over about stuff, you know, which tends toward the horrific or the, you know, in my life, those things I find fascinating, you know, are fears and shames and stuff like that I wonder about. I don't really wonder about. Although I love comedy about very minute things like Jerry Seinfeld does, or like I love Brian Regan is one of my favorites. So I certainly think those guys are important comedians because in a way, like the tiny everyday things that we do in life, that's what life actually is. So they may be the deepest of all by just taking the actual things we do, because a man is what he does rather than what he thinks or says usually, but it's usually what, at the end of his life, it's what he did, you know. So those guys are probably, they're certainly more important than the, you know, what I refer to as journalists. You know, that's the least interesting comedy to me, is just straight journalism, where it's just straight facts about politics and so forth. Like there was a saying, all politics are gossip, and that was Thoreau in like fucking 1600 or some shit. You know what I mean? So, and I think it is like a lot of times you go, it's a political comic, and then the guy's like, George Bush has a weird haircut. You're like, well, what the fuck is that political? No, but anyways, whatever. But, you know, listen, it has its place. But it's not funny. To tell you the truth, it's very hard to be funny about you really, if you, it's the same with atheism. It's the same with if you don't like something, if your idea is, I don't like Republicans, and that's your comedy, it's very hard to be funny when it's about something you don't like. You know, it's much more interesting to talk about good things. I don't know, it's hard to really articulate, but I think that people are the same. Everyone's the same. That's what I think. And so if you just try to understand people and you don't demonize. If you demonize people, you're a fucking idiot. In my mind, Hitler is no demon to me. He's just a guy. So I think if you demonize people, you're an idiot, and nothing you can say can be taken seriously, and I'm not going to laugh at it. That's all.
So Kenneth had told you to talk about things you care about, and then when we spoke a week or so ago, you were saying about the new type of comedy, or what's become in fashion is sort of the confessional type, and personal stuff. Right, so there's a difference there. You're talking about things that really interest you, but it's not just about you. There's a distinction.
Yeah, there's a big distinction between like stuff that interests you and then just wallowing in self-pity about stuff, you know, or thinking that your life is special or different, or, you know, like I've seen one-man shows where the guy has cancer or some fucking thing. I'm like, well, everybody's got cancer. I don't give a fuck about your cancer. You know what I mean? I don't give a, like, go tell your pastor that, or your family. I don't want to hear your fucking story. So that's just showing off, you know, or being ultra honest for its own sake or something like that. You know, that's it's not a virtue to be honest, and it's not a, you know, it's only in comedy it's a virtue to be funny. Like, that's why, in my mind, like, Bob Hope was a fantastic comic because he was never ever once serious, and he never got a sense of. There's two kinds of guys. There's guys like Pryor who are like brilliant because they're so vulnerable and you know who they are, and then there's guys like Bob Hope who are brilliant because they're like invisible. To me, Bob Hope in a way is a little bit on a higher level because he presents a sort of a existential view of life where everything is reduced to the breeziest jokes possible. It doesn't even seem like he's a person. It seems like he's a cartoon. And I think if you can rise to the level of cartoon, then because who's funnier than like Bugs Bunny or somebody, you know? You know, if Bugs Bunny started fucking railing against God, you'd go, what? That guy doesn't seem that funny anymore. He never made that mistake.
But Bob Hope, though, it was from another era, so you can't really fault him, but he employed lots of writers.
Yes.
So whereas Pryor was talking, I don't know if he had writers, but I doubt it.
I don't think so, no. Pryor was talking about, it's completely different things. But, but people really make out Shecky Greene, who was a fantastic comic, or Bob Hope as these hacks or anything like that, but it was far from it. And Bob Hope, the fact that you can't even quote a Bob Hope joke, and yet he was maybe the most successful stand-up comic ever, is a testament to his unbelievable skills as a stand-up comic, because he didn't need jokes. This guy didn't have good jokes. People would write them for him, and they all sucked. And I remember him going on the Tonight Show. Every joke sucked, and then afterwards he would be smiling and stuff. I've come to this thing, Guy, that I realize there's laughter, and then there's smiling. And I think in the final end, I've only come to this realization the last couple of years in comedy, because I always wanted to punch people in the stomach and make them laugh so hard they couldn't stop and stuff. But I've come to understand that just smiling and the spread of goodwill might be a higher art form than really heavy, hard laughter. As counter as that seems, when I look back at fondness of people, I think of people like John Candy, but I always think of him like from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, where he was sweet, and I smile at that. Or Chaplin. Whenever I think of Chaplin, I smile more than I laugh out loud at some. That's why I was saying Bob Hope too. I just smile when I think of those guys. I don't know. That's probably just a gift that they have that either you have or you don't. But
when I saw, I know you speak reverentially, as a lot of great comics do, of Bill Cosby. You know, I mean, I listened to his albums, memorized them as a kid. They were fantastic, but his later stuff, not so much. And I went to see him, and highly enjoyable, and I sat there smiling. I didn't really laugh, and I smiled.
No, yeah, you don't laugh, you smile, and then you get home, and I guess that's why, like Carlin, as great as he was, I mean, it didn't make you happy. You know, he didn't make you happy, and as great as he was very outside. You know, he was very like a social critic, whereas Cosby was talking about his own life and experiences that you related to. So to me, it's far more artful what Cosby did, and I think there's a thing with, you know, a presentational comic is always going to be more admired, as in anything. Like if you're a presentational artist, whether you're a singer, you know, if you sing real loud and you're whatever the fuck they call those things, notes go up and down and stuff, that's considered the great singer. And if you're a comic, if you're making points and telling people stuff that sounds important, then you're going to be considered important. And if you're an actor, you know, if you're Brando, you're great. And if you're Robert Duvall, who I think is a much better actor, you're not going to be considered that great because the great guys don't show the craft, you know. The craft and the art's always invisible with those guys. So I think the presentational guy is always going to win in terms of success and in terms of public perception, and that's why George Carlin and Bill Hicks or stuff are always going to be considered at a much higher level than Bob Hope, who was actually the guy who was at a very, very high level, in my estimation.
It's funny about Hope, though. I mean, you've surely been in situations where you've had to read other writers' jokes on TV, and it's probably, I don't know, maybe you can tell me, is it more difficult than doing your own? Like, so Hope should get more credit for doing other people's jokes.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to do jokes like that other people write because they have to be so good, you know, to live up to. You want your jokes to be always good, and you live in fear. But Hope didn't have that. Hope did a very specific thing that people didn't understand what he was doing. But he would do the joke. He would, if you watch him, he would do the joke. Then they would always cut to a close-up on him, and he would look into the audience, and he'd put like a flash. He was a very good actor. He put like a flash of fear in his eyes, as if he had just been caught, like he was an imposter, like he knew the joke was bad, and the jig was up, you know, and he was going to get kicked out of show. But it was just a very, very subtle, quick, fast thing. But that's what made everyone laugh. They didn't know why they were laughing. That's why they were laughing. I know, because I've watched it. I've watched it so many times.
This is Stuart Francis. You're listening to What's So Funny on CFRO 102.7.
You know, a lot of comics, you can tell who really influenced them. You have this unique voice. I can't figure out who your influences were, but was it Hope? Was it other guys?
Well, I watched a lot of comedy when I was young on TV, but I don't know how when I started writing comedy, I would always like look to writers rather than because I found the writing in stand-up highly inferior to the writing in songs and to the writing in, obviously, in literature. And so I was lucky enough to read a lot of books. And I have a friend of mine that's a country songwriter that I feel is the best writer in America, and I talk to him a lot. And I listened to, you know, Bob Dylan and stuff when I was young, and so I feel like songwriters I like a lot as writers. I think, but I think novelists, you know, especially the Russians, in terms of writing, were like the most fantastic writers. So that's where I figured out what writing was about. not from comedians.
But you have to make it funny.
Yeah, you have to make it funny, but they're all, there's no new thoughts or anything. That's also what I find funny about people that go to make points and don't understand these points were made hundreds of years ago, But the greatest thoughts are the funniest ideas, and if you're lucky enough to read literature, actual literature, then you find out, these people that wrote it know everything about the human condition. So all you have to do is read them, and it's better than experiencing things in life. That's for sure.
Reading is better. Reading is better than experiencing.
Yes, reading is far superior to experience, because when you read, you can read a master writer's insights into the world that would take you forever. I can't. If I read Moby Dick, how am I supposed to experience that in life? I can't experience anything. All I can do, especially in this life, is go and have the same banal conversations with the same people over and over and over in an endless loop of nonsense.
Christian.
Yeah. So I'm trying to read as much as I can. I only have so many years. I'm a very slow reader. Fuck, I'm so slow. It's crazy. And I never got to go to school, so it's a lot harder for me without the proper education to understand everything. But I really like to read.
But you do notice these authors from hundreds of years ago, as you say, we haven't changed. I mean, the little details have changed, but humans are humans.
No, it's amazing. That's what's incredible about reading things from 300 years ago. It's like, I always thought it was funny, like when I was growing up and I'd see shows like from Leave It to Beaver or something from the 50s and stuff, and everybody seemed like completely different, and it was only 30 years ago. Yeah. And it was like, well, these people are completely different than I am. Then I read like a novel from 300 years ago. I'm like, this guy's exactly like I am. Like that TV show is all a bunch of lies. They weren't like that at all. I just thought they were. But it is incredible when you read like, something from 300 or 400 years ago, and there's like they're talking about not wanting to fuck their wife and worry about death and. Their kid doesn't love them and all this stuff. It's amazing. Yeah, we never change at all, except they said it all perfectly, and we don't have to. We're lucky enough to just get to read it and understand it. I'm very disappointed with all of this now.
With all of what?
Start again. I think we should start from scratch.
What would you talk about, though? Comedy?
Yeah, we could just trade some jokes, some quips.
This is deep. This cuts to the root of it all. When we spoke the other day, I was glad to clear up the notion that you're not a Republican or right wing.
Oh yeah, well that's interesting that you say about Adam Carolla, because people like to do that. They like to say you are something, that you're not. And stupidly a couple of times to be provocative. I sometimes will just, for the point of arguing with someone, I'll argue with them and just take, without even knowing anything about the issue. I know I can.
You know how to push their buttons.
Yeah, I know how to push their buttons. So and there was this old bag, Barbara Walters, one time, who everybody pretends is a good journalist, but she's horrible, and she started that whole celebrity shit. But so I was on her show, and she's yapping about something. Anyway, that's where it started, because I just wanted to get under her skin. So I called like President Clinton a murderer or something, just as a joke. And then ever since then, they ask me questions. But no, I'm interested. I find that if you're either a Republican or a Democrat, I think you're both idiots, because you have a whole big, you have to believe in all this stuff, like you have to believe in all their 10 beliefs, or all these other 10 beliefs, and I think that's ridiculous. I think you should be able to pick and choose what you believe, or believe something that neither of them believe, or whatever. So I hate being, and I don't like powerful people, you know? I don't like power. I don't like any politician. And I don't like power. I don't like people that have power over me. I don't like to have power over anyone else. It's my least favorite thing in life is having to answer to anybody or expecting anyone to answer to me. I hate that. Man, I hate that.
So you don't identify one way or the other, conservative or liberal, but when you do pick and choose, as I do, as your pal Dennis Miller does, socially he's very progressive on lots of issues, but he chooses to align himself with the right. Whereas I might agree with some things he says, offhand I can't think of any, but theoretically I could, and I choose to align myself on the left. So, you just refuse to even align yourself one way or the other, but do most of your beliefs fall on one side or the other?
Well, I find some things are too. I have some beliefs that are too inflammatory to even discuss, unfortunately. Because
of the way they'll be taken.
Because there are certain things in society that you're not allowed to believe or speak publicly. Mm-hmm. And so I'll just never say them. I'll just leave them in my little head. But mostly, I find all these things ridiculous. And I hate that we forced people into, first of all, I hate that we force people into identifying themselves by little tiny, because we oppress people, we further oppress them by forcing them to identify themselves as what I consider less than human. So if someone says, I am proud to be black, I go, that's too bad for that guy, because it's a retarded thing to be proud of. We see it with white power. If someone says, I'm proud to be white, we see how ridiculous that sounds. Mm-hmm. But we don't see it when a person says, because they've been oppressed, I'm proud to be black. But it is ridiculous. We've pushed them into a corner where now they're going to spend their whole life identifying themselves by the pigment of their skin, which is a sad waste of life. Or if you say, I'm proud to be gay, that's what I am, and that's how I'll live my life. Well, boy, you're really limiting yourself there, and it's too bad. And I know you've been forced into it by being pushed down and oppressed, but it's still very, very sad. And I don't think of myself as Canadian, and I think it's a terrible thing to say you're proud to be a Canadian or proud to be an American. I think all that stuff is nonsense. You're proud to be. You may as well be proud to have lungs. You didn't accomplish nothing. You're just born somewhere, or you were just born with a skin that's a certain color, or born, with a sexual attraction to a certain type of person. That stuff's all. It's all just little miniature things in life that are so unimportant. And when people try to tell me that God is not important, but that this nonsense is important, I couldn't disagree more.
This nonsense being life.
Not being life, being the tiny gossip of life. Like to me, saying I'm proud to be Asian, you may as well say I'm proud to have a green shirt. I don't know what the fuck you're so proud of. So I think as far as the question of God goes, I wish that science, which is supposed to explore these things, refuses to explore the fundamental question that is of interest not only to religious people, but intensely to atheists as well. They spend a lot of time thinking about something they don't care about, or they pretend they don't care about. That science should spend all their time. I mean, they spend time trying to find new galaxies, as if that's important. since God's an unproven thing, just a hypothesis at this point, I think it would be good to study it.
Well, but it can't in the scientific process. There has to be something there. How could you even go about? I mean, they've gone through space. They didn't find God floating around. How could you possibly test it scientifically? They just say it's unknowable. It's beyond our area of what we can know. Right? It's a belief. It's a faith.
Well, that's what they say because they're thinking in evidentiary ways, but the scientific method. That's what science is. But the scientific method, first of all, the scientific method always begins with intuition. Always. Einstein used intuition. He did not study things objectively and find things. He was struck with something and then followed that notion that he had, or whatever you call that. I call it intuition. You could put divine roots to it if you wanted to too, but that's how things are. That's how important things are discovered. And obviously, there is an enormous intuition amongst every person that has ever lived that God exists.
But it has to go beyond intuition into the whole scientific community verifying it or falsifying it. So it starts with that intuition, but then there has to be something there. There has to be some facts.
No, not necessarily. For instance, if you have a deep intuition that cigarettes cause cancer, which is still unproven, by the way, then you don't need evidence. And if in a court of law, you certainly don't need evidence. You don't need a body. You don't need to find a dead body. If something, if all things point to something, I don't know. I have very strong belief in intuition, and I just find it interesting that something that everyone believes, some people pretend not to. I just find that very, very interesting. That's all.
Well, it's not everyone, then. It's. Yeah, I think that's.
Like, for instance, I'll tell you this. For instance, if you see an atheist, you will never see an atheist argue that God doesn't exist because the tenets of Scientology are absurd. They will always pick Christianity. So it's very interesting that they choose the God that they decide doesn't exist, which means really they're choosing the God they think exists.
No, I don't think that's the case. If you read some atheists, they'll say that Zeus doesn't exist, that, the Christian God doesn't exist, that any of the gods you can think of don't exist. Or better yet, they'll say, maybe strong atheists will say that, but the intellectually more honest ones might say, there's just no evidence that they exist, and since there is no concrete evidence, why bother living your life that way in assuming that there is?
Well, here's the thing. Science has only proven maybe, I think, 4 things in the history of science. So that's why there's a theory of evolution, even though evolution is I think certain. It certainly happened. I think evolution certainly happened. Now, I could say to you if I wanted to that it is a theory because they haven't proven it. But I believe it.
They use theory differently in science. Yeah. It doesn't mean the same as, I have a theory that, whatever.
They use it because they have strict rules on what makes a law.
Right.
And it's almost, impossible for anything to become a law.
But scientists will believe that, it is 99.9% sure, given that there is evolution, but they're always open to new evidence, and they have to be. And, and when you talk about Copernicus...
I don't know if they're open to new evidence. When I hear Stephen Hawking say there is no God, I go, what kind of scientist is that? I heard him say that. I heard him say there is no God. It's a fairy tale. That's not a scientist to me.
Well, that's one scientist. So the scientific community is everybody.
Stephen Hawking's.
Yeah.
That's the preeminent physicist in the entire world, is saying something out of obvious prejudice.
Did you hear the whole quote, or is this like an Adam Carolla thing?
No, I didn't hear the whole quote. No,
You read it on Facebook.
no, I did not hear the whole quote, to be fair. But I was kind of shocked that that science says, like, we've given up. I don't know when scientists started saying things were unknowable, but that's a new one on me, because that's not a scientific term as far as I know. Unknowable?
Maybe they don't.
I don't think they could. I don't think scientists could possibly use that term unknowable, because it infers that they can see into the future.
Okay, now you can't blame me for where this has gone.
No,
right?
I can't. No.
But I'm going to go with it. How would you even begin to prove the existence of a God?
Well, I don't know, because I don't have the powers of a scientist. I certainly couldn't prove the existence of the planet Mercury, if that's even a planet anymore. I can't. I can prove anything. I'm just taking their word for it.
Right, and that's what we do. And when you say in your act, I know it's comedy, but, Copernicus and Sir Isaac Newton, they made these glaring errors. But at the time, that was the best evidence available, But who is it that always corrects them? It's science as a community. It's other scientists. It's not just somebody going, no, I got this idea. It's actually, maybe that's how it starts, but then they actually have to set out and study it and prove it.
Yes.
No, so it's other scientists that correct scientists.
I'm all for science.
Okay, good.
Because I want them to make things that'll make me live longer and stuff, But I would really like I would like eternal life. I would like some proof, one way or the other. If prove it that God doesn't exist, I don't care what you prove. Like, at least prove one of them. Right. But try to work on the only important thing. Certainly everyone can agree that's the most important thing, whether or not we're alone, or whether or not we're taken care of. Certainly anyone in their right mind would agree that's the most important question to answer.
You mean for an afterlife?
Not necessarily for an afterlife, but that would also be good. But without God, there's no purpose. I don't care what anyone pretends otherwise. But it's highly, highly irrational to say that there's purpose without God, because there simply isn't.
Right, but it's not a bad thing to have no purpose. We're born, we die. It was nice.
Though that's fine, but that's not what most atheists proclaim. But no, if that were the case, that would be fine as well. But most atheists proclaim that there can be purpose in life without God.
Well, you make your own purpose, right? Or not, whatever. But you're just here for however long you're here.
Yeah, but I don't believe you can make your own purpose any more than I believe.
So a greater purpose.
No, I just think obviously a fucking dog can't make his own purpose. So, or an ant, or a honeybee, you know what I mean? So why the fuck should we think we can make our own purpose? It doesn't make sense.
So define purpose.
Again, it's this idea that man is somehow important. It's this crazy idea that both highly religious people have and atheists have, that man has some quality to them. Atheists have this idea that they can't quite resolve within themselves, that man is divine, but they can't say divine because that means God. But they believe it. They don't believe they're equal. Man, no man, I don't care what they say, no man believes he's equal to an animal or an insect. No man. I don't care how, if he lives on top of a mountain with snow and shit, he still doesn't believe he's an insect.
Seems like this is a reaction against certain atheists who have certain arguments, but that shouldn't affect how you believe.
No, it doesn't affect how I believe. Okay. No. I don't believe. I know. It's a different, and because I believe intuition is everything to me, more than my mind, because my mind can play tricks on me, and my mind is very easily swayed by others and so forth. I personally believe that there's something else other than the mind that you can't talk me into murdering somebody with your atheistic idea that what does it matter one way or the other. I could read all the existential literature of all time. I still wouldn't kill someone.
Take some bath salts, though.
It's good of you to try to help make this funny at some point.
Your intuition must have been proven wrong at some point in your life.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's very true. Like, but not the real deep intuition that stayed. Like, I often would find myself like very heavily influenced by culture, or whatever you want to call it, or social, whatever those words are. Where I sometimes, I remember when I realized I didn't like sunsets at one point in my life, and I was like, "What the fuck am I looking at this shit? I don't even like it." And I realized that I just thought I liked it because I was told they were supposed to be beautiful or something. And I remember because I was with my kid and I was looking at this stupid fucking sunset, like I wasted my time so often looking at it, and I was like, I don't even like this shit. Why the fuck? But you just have certain moments in your life where you come to for a second with some lucidity. But yeah, obviously we're not immune to this terrible educative process that weighing us down all the time. None of us are. How can we not believe in what everybody believes on some level? But you try the best you can to maybe not wallow in cliches for your whole life. If you take any subject on any arguments people make, all they are empty, false cliches, in my opinion, at least. I don't know, though.
You ever talk about this on Letterman?
Look, man, I wanted to be funny. We fucked up somewhere along the way.
No, I love it. But you say after you were on Marin and people were talking about, oh man, it blew my mind how sensitive Norm was, and you said like, yeah, anytime a comedian is I forget how you worded it.
Because there's a lower bar with comedians that if they say something that's halfway fucking makes any sense at all, it's the same with an actor. We're fucking idiots. So if a clown says something, you know what I mean? If a bird with a broken wing fucking hobbles it together to fucking jump up and fly for 3 inches, everybody's happy. That was a bad fucking example of that.
Well, no, it's because you're high.
Exactly. When I fucking started thinking I had MS or something, with my hypochondria and shit, because people would go after shows, man, what are you on? I'm like, nothing. They're like, your voice is slurry, and then I read something about that's whatever, MS and stuff. People have MS. At first, people think because they're stumbling and their balance is. I'm like, I don't have good balance and I slur my words, but no, I don't have MS.
Did you get it checked?
I actually did get it checked.
I've been checked for it too.
Have you?
Yeah. Well, my mom had it.
Oh, yeah. It's good to be checked for everything. My God.
And after to bring it full circle here, after you get checked for something like a colonoscopy or MS or whatever, it gives you a new lease on life for at least a month, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's that, like, you walk out and the grass looks a little greener. And, and then God is everywhere. And then a couple days pass and, you're carping about the butcher didn't give you enough goddamn pork. And you wanted a full loin and the guy only gave you a quarter. If only we could stop with these little tiny things and this preposterous gadgetry that we're talking into, and just for a moment, think about real stuff. Hey, here's Josh. Come on in, man.
This would be a good time to end it.
I know, the least funny podcast of all time with a comedian.
Thank
made
you,
history.
Norm.
Thanks, guy.
Well, what'd you make of that? Apologize to anyone who wanted to hear solely funny Norm Macdonald. But, he's a deep guy. And I like talking about it, too. So there you go. If you enjoyed it, and you're listening to this on podcast, I'd love it if you gave us a rating at iTunes. It would be much appreciated. You know what? Even if you didn't like it. If you said, this guy didn't talk about comedy for 90 minutes, 1 star, by all means. Off you go. We're off the next 2 weeks on the radio, back on August 5th. So I'll talk to you then. Thanks.